Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sue Minahan. Talk Cosmos. Today is November, and we have entered the new season looking at more of the holidays, along with the time change. Our topic is Pluto Mythos, and this is the profound themes of change, transformation, and regeneration. There's also potent astrology because the upcoming Scorpio new moon later in the month on the 20th brings a real collaboration of the planets in different patterns that brings these themes of Pluto, of rebirth and beginnings. So I'm very happy to have a special panel today with a guest that we have. Yes, hi, Jen Sachs. How are you?
I was muted, but now I'm unmuted. I'm well, thank you. Appreciate you having me today. How are you doing?
Well, I'm fine. And I'm fine after so many changes we've already experienced. I imagine our listeners too are with the time change and just adjustments we were going to have. But we'll just jump right into this. Yes, Jen Sachs is a certified astrologer with the AFA and a tarot reader, certified through Biddy Tarot, and does consultations and a lifelong quest. And now she's really going from that experience, putting it out into the world of social media. And well, you're on, you don't have this, but you are on CAT, which is Kepler Toastmasters Club. You're
yes,
a board member there.
And I am, yes, and a mentor as well. Yes.
Yes. So it all adds to the picture. And on AstroJam, if we have one at the end of the month, we'll see how that goes. And myself, I founded Talk Cosmos, and I'm involved in different ways studying, and I love mythology. So this is near and dear to my heart, how to bring that voice from the past into the present. So let's just jump into it. We have so many things. It's Persephone, and that word means to sprout. There she is picking the daffodils, which actually later in the 1500s I learned is named was Narcissus, and now it's called daffodils. That was a big jump for me. But anyway, my only other thought about that is that there are myths about the daffodil. There is Narcissus, who fell into the lake and drowned because he loved himself so much, and Echo kept repeating his name. But now it's a symbol of new life and hope.
Yes, and that's really interesting. And the conversation, speaking of social media, the conversation around the narcissism personality disorder is being spoken about now more than ever. And although I'm not here to diagnose, and I'm by all means not a doctor, but it's interesting that this conversation is coming up, and that Persephone means to sprout. Because we do live in a toxic, individualistic society, across the globe, I would say. And so I just find it interesting that all of this is kind of piecing together, like, what is narcissism? Is he or she a narcissist, or they a narcissist? Am I, all of this identifying with the self, which, what
yes.
This kind of is. It's which would be overly identifying with oneself.
That's the important point. You really nailed that last thought, because I was just reading, I have several books, and one of them is The Care of the Soul by Thomas More, sort of rereading it. And it brings a whole chapter on narcissism, which amazed me, because I had this black and white view, polarity view, it's bad. And thinking of the fact that here is just absorbed with oneself. But what he was bringing out which is what I think supports your last thought, is that it is a stage, that there's in the beginning of it, we need to build self-confidence and have that narcissistic view of ourselves. But there comes a point where if you keep thinking you're not enough and you keep focusing on yourself, then it's over the top and it's narcissistic. You need to branch out. So
yes. And, and it goes back to, the moon is in Aries today. So let's identify with the moon, the Aries expression real quick. But, Aries is the first house, the first sign, and, it's of the body. And it's, we need to know how to identify with our body, and also with the Leo, how to identify with our ego in a way that is healthy for us to sustain our spiritual practices, even in this very tangible realm.
It is true. And when to get off the stage in that case, which has also been brought up and I've been reading. We'll go on with this story, because the story of Persephone in mythology is so important. Her mother is Ceres, which is the Roman name, or Demetra of the Greek name. And as she's picking these flowers, and it was interesting, Jen, that I read in one, because there's so many interpretations, but her job was to paint the flowers. I searched and searched. That was the only time I saw that, but I'd never read that. But the fact was that here she is picking the daffodil, later the narcissus, and boom, what happens? But she's abducted, and you could say to the underworld with Pluto. Go ahead.
Yes, and this starts the love story, if you want to identify it as that is told time and time again. Yes, yeah, she's out there minding her own business, picking up these beautiful sprouts around the garden or the field, and there's a lot of debate on whether or not Persephone was interested in Hades or Pluto or not. And
or transformation, if I can throw that in. I'm
yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but there isn't necessarily a consciousness, but maybe a subconscious. I think that's, for me, the question. But go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'll finish that thought a little bit later on. But yeah, the ground splits open and Hades pulls her into the underworld, from beautiful spring-filled fields to the depth of darkness, to where it's just herself, and the man or the god who brought her into that depth and that darkness.
Right. And the mother, Ceres, is bereft and absolutely distraught. Destroyed, you could say. And so this whole mythology, it has been brought up to be the mother and child, a large case of this. And actually, we understand the roots of agriculture, which we'll thread in later. So feel free to speak, because Ceres is the original goddess of original, but really in early mythology, food, sustenance, life, the seeds. When is the river going to flood so that we can eat again with the grain? So she holds this grain, which is very Virgonian, and the food source. So in other words, talk about Ceres.
Yes, Ceres and, Demeter, the archetype kind of coming together. Yes, and Demeter was the goddess of agriculture, and she didn't just, make sure that she didn't just tend to agriculture for it to bloom and to have stuff for us to harvest. She also taught agriculture as well. So she made sure that it wasn't just her, that this information was passed on throughout the realm. So, and she kept all the blooms going and the wheat growing. So there's things that are pretty and things that are, yummy and nurturing for us to sustain our physical body. And whenever her daughter was taken into the underrealm without her knowing, it's stated that Demeter went into a protest and stopped fulfilling her godly duties. And whenever that happened, and whenever she stopped doing that and stopped, everything went from full, beautiful golden blossoms to icy, cold winters. And that's what kind of got started. And I kind of want to like just touch on a little bit, just it's funny how it's stated that she went into protest. We can kind of talk about that later, but I want to that it is claimed that she protested and brought us into winter whenever her daughter was stolen.
And it was a recurring theme. That's true, because she does return. But let's look also at the transformational quality, because in life, Pluto is transformation, and it is death, and it's the ending of a cycle. And at this time, it wasn't so much rebirth, but it became rebirth because of this story. But at this time, Persephone becomes the queen of the underworld. They have a pretty committed relationship. I mean, you can read other things about it. Some say, oh, absolute, and others kind of suggest other ideas. But the fact is, they are very committed. And there is Cerberus, a three-headed hound that had a tail of a serpent and other ideas. But this prevented the dead from leaving. So they really guarded deceased souls. With his invisible helmet, nobody could go there except Mercury, Hermes. And there were a few others that were allowed to get in and go out in mythologies. But essentially, it was only Mercury, our cerebral mental self, that can enter into this realm of the underworld. And we'll bring that up as far as the upcoming, we're going into a Mercury retrograde. And amazingly, it's going to be in Scorpio, and it's quite potent. So,
yes, I just one thing to add to that is, of course, it's Mercury, because somebody needs to be able to communicate what's happening in this underworld.
That's exactly right. It is our part. And, there's people that are attuned to deceased people, spiritualists, mediums, all throughout time. And also ancestors. We just had Day of the Dead, where it isn't just Mexico or the Latin countries, but it's been with Samhain has been part of life before civilization, before we started writing this down. So these stories are so powerful. Let's go on and talk whatever comes to mind here. I just have slides to, it's in this kind of a flow. It's very hard to say. Here's another one interesting, like Pluto and Persephone and the different goddesses, which I think are the fates, and the dog. But, throughout this series takes on the nanny job with a king and queen, and in the process tries to replicate her child through feeding ambrosia to the baby that she's a nanny for, and then burning off the mortality. That was thwarted because the mother finds her and just horrified. So then she has to reveal who she really is, which I find so interesting in this story because Pluto and Ceres are sister and brother, and we have them in our charts. And Ceres is now a dwarf planet along with Pluto. In fact, she's the one that demoted. No, it was Eris that actually demoted Pluto. But what I'm getting at is that part of ourself, that divine part of ourself, needs to be the guide, the mentor, the one that gives nurturing and sustenance to others, rather than trying to claim our divinity and replicate what we've lost. I think that's a key part of this whole transformational part that we're in. Like, what's our new role? I think that's questions that we'll have later. Here, in this particular slide is the sun. One of them is Persephone and one is Demeter in this particular tablet. But Triptolemus is who she taught agriculture to. And I guess one story says she breastfed him and he grew suddenly to a big person. So anyway, it was like very nurtured. And then he in turn taught agriculture. So in a sense, a very strong sense, people were able to nurture themselves, to feed, to survive.
Yes. And, that's what I feel is important with Ceres and Demeter within this story is it's this unconditional devotion from the mother that brings in self-reflection, but also times of humility whenever one is vulnerable because they don't have what they need in order for their physical body to be sustained in this realm. And that's something talking about like overly identifying with oneself. It's important to take these moments whenever we are being broken open to see who is coming in to nurture us back to health, and not just nurturing us back to health, but especially those who are doing so unconditionally or out of a moment of humility themselves because they realize their own wrongdoings in the past.
That is very powerful, Jen. You really bring up good points. I love that self-reflection, humility that's never been quite brought in. But when you think of the Virgonian sense of where Ceres, well, in a sense, sits as the archetype, it is very service-oriented and that introspection so involved. This here, what's fascinating too in this growth, soul growth, which Pluto represents, process is the Aleutian mysteries, which if you divulged was penalty by death, and therefore nobody knows. But it lasted from 300 BC, before that, until 392 AD, at least 700 years, probably 800, enormous amounts of time where it became where men, women, slaves, anybody, as long as you hadn't blood guilt, you hadn't killed somebody, murdered, not killed because there's war, but murdered, deliberately revenged, murdered somebody. And as long as you could speak Greek, meaning you weren't not a heathen, but you had to be able to speak Greek. But therefore, slaves, anybody could be involved. And it lasted 10 days in time as it went along. So there was this phase, it replicated this whole idea of this descent, search, and then ascent, where the mother is reunited with the child, which I think you're bringing up in some of our questions, which I say you, Jen, but in our conversations, because we really introspected, chatted over this, that the role of the mother is not always understood. Yes, it has improved. Jobs will allow some time off for it, but there still isn't this deep appreciation of that role that is so valid. But here, but I'm thinking too of this rebirth. So Persephone brought in, as you had said, this sense of rebirth. It didn't start that way, but it became where afterlife had spiritual renewal. She changed the whole persona.
Yes. And my perspective of Demeter is she was a little bit of a helicopter mom. So, and there's pros and cons to that as well. But how Demeter, I should say, how Persephone was mothered and nurtured up until the point when she was taken to the underworld. All of that connection and sense of safety and sense of peace and, the ability to be curious and playful, which are often associated with being childlike and innocent. She was able to whenever she went into the underworld, it gave her that option to, or the ability to really reflect on that and to see it in a way that she was never able to see whenever she was in the midst of being nurtured by her mother on a day-to-day basis. And again, my perspective of the story, it's this devotion from her mom that allowed Persephone to carry that devotion to herself into the underworld, and for her to dig down deep and to make the decision to transmute everything that she's going through and turn into a queen, and potentially the one real person, god, goddess of all the different creatures of the time that Hades had a sense of fear and respect for in a way that he didn't anybody else.
It is so true. He let Orpheus, because of Persephone, was it Orpheus that was killed and wanted to go back to his betrothed love? Eurydice, I think, was her name. And Pluto allowed it because he loved Persephone, on a condition that Orpheus, who was this great musician who gave omens or spirit things through his music. Anyway, he looked back and lost her. So in other words, but Pluto had released this possibility. I love your idea, though, the support of the nurturing, that caregiving nurturing by the mother. And it could, of course, have been the father, but it is that caregiving. There's so many times I reflect in my own life, tremendous changes. And thankfully, in my own family, I had that support where I could get some identity of who I was at that time to pick up my pieces and keep going on, So it's really very... And the fact, too, you had brought up in our chat of the roots, that's where you can grow your roots, by going underground. You can develop that new part of yourself, the value of it.
Yes. And that brings in the energy of the moon in astrology, building roots for the rest of the chart sitting at the bottom. Yes. And just to kind of touch on that, the mother lacks appreciation. It's kind of a similar concept. Like, I didn't realize how much I appreciated the sun when I lived in Southern California until I moved to Seattle. And the sun goes down at 4 p.m. at a certain time of the year. So there can be an understanding of, I'm receiving this motherly love every day, but to truly appreciate the sacrifice and the being put first above the mother's own needs as a child, that is probably not going to be really understood until one is off and they have to take care of themselves for the first time when they're off to college, or for whatever reason they leave the house and then the mother's not there to do what she just does and was never really seen by the child before.
Yeah. And one does need autonomy. So the moon in Aries is pretty important. I think we will take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about this as we go into the astrology, because Pluto is in Aquarius right now. In fact, I will say that, as we know, there were 5 conjunctions at the 0 point of Aquarius, 2 in 2023, and 3 in 2024, which was now a year ago on November 19th, where it actually entered. And it just now, as of last year, it will stay for 20 years in Aquarius, and it's retrograde. I'm trying to speak fast and my tongue won't keep up. I'm so sorry. At any rate, the point is, it's direct. It's not retrograde. However, all the outer planets are retrograde, and Mercury is in its shadow path and will be. So with that said, let's take a break. We'll be right back on with Jen Sachs. This is Talk Cosmos, and we're talking about the Pluto Mythos. Come right back. We're not going far. Thanks.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Scorpio, traditionally ruled by Mars, now ruled by Pluto. By departing a cycle based on comparison between extreme energies, finding balance, Scorpio commits a relationship to exchange resources, experiencing power and powerlessness for the purpose of soul growth transformation. As a fixed water sign that is extreme, intense, and secretively deep, Scorpio's passionate nature questions the psychology and mystery concerning life and death.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
This is Martha Norwalk, every Sunday morning beginning at 9 a.m. Thanks in part to Natasha Venter at intuitiveclarifications.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, November 9th, it's Best Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique, Neuroenergetic Balancing, Rasmussen Reset, and Energy Code Sunday. Dr. Nels Rasmussen and Sister Linda Rasmussen join us. They'll take your phone calls and help you or your animal friends with emotional, behavioral, or physical issues. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Find out the latest about your favorite shows on Alternative Talk 1150. Check out 1150kknw.com.
Hello, we're back again. Hi, Jen. So we'll continue on with this because the Pluto in Aquarius also brings up, which we'll be showing with this new moon, why we're bringing this up, the grand conjunction when Jupiter and Saturn in 2020 on December 21st conjunct at 0 degrees. And it's a pattern they do a cycle every 20 years. However, there is a grand conjunction process of 200 years. So it's shifted. We're in that tumultuous time of shifting from Earth energy for the past 200 years into air. And this is renowned to being a difficult time, the material into what you can't see. It's the connections.
Yes. And, Earth is very stabilizing and it's, very tangible. We can touch it. And then air is very intelligent and swift, and there's a bit of a chill to it. So anytime we move from Earth to air, it's this almost like a split out of body experience in a way.
Like abandonment almost.
Yeah.
In a sense. Yeah. Yes. It's like, where did you go? What happened?
Right. Which is something, abandonment issues is something
I hadn't thought of that.
Bring up. Yes. So it's like Earth to air. There can be a forgetting of the physical self, of how important that is, and really remembering what just what our senses are. And I know that in order to process our senses, it's kind of an airy thing because it's in our brain and nervous system. However, air is the nervous system without really
grounded
the nervous system, if that makes sense. So it's like it just it has this ability to take oneself out of one's body. So it's just,
absolutely. Yes, Jen.
Stabilizing might be the word that I'm looking for. It's very Uranian, but just to go from Earth to air.
I'm going to add that word to my list here because that's really vital. With that conjunction, we have experienced a square just recently. However, what's really important coming up is the trine between this energy, and it will be exact next summer on the 31st in August, and then 2 times in 2027. So we're going through a period of this tremendous flow between the contraction, the expansion, the essential stuff, and the visions that we want to just jump into. It's so dynamic. And I'm bringing this up because, yes, it's Aquarius, and Pluto's in Aquarius. It's still at 1 degree, I think, right now. So it's conjunct that point. And we will see right here in this upcoming Scorpio moon, since it started in orb as of September, the new moons now for 6 months are going to be at 28 degrees, because that happens between one eclipse and the next eclipse, interestingly, and then it shifts with the next set. But now we're at 28 degrees. We just had one in Libra. But anyway, this is in Scorpio, and Mercury, the cycle pump, is exactly conjuncted. It's so powerful. And you can see that Saturn, and they're at the same degree, 25 degrees of water. They're in that grand trine with the sun and moon and Mercury. This whole conversation of going down, we haven't got there yet. This is November 20th. Today is only the 2nd. So we have weeks ahead, and we're still in the Libra. I think the full moon's coming up.
Yes. Yeah, this is interesting, because it's not just, Saturn and Jupiter, making its rounds from its conjunction to the trine. There's all these other powerful players and dynamics happening in addition to all these things. So, but Saturn and Jupiter, Jupiter is optimism and Saturn is depression. So these two planets alone are learning how to conversate in a way and hopefully find like a happy medium, like
to be sober, actually, you could say, because yes, you can get so ungrounded, as we were talking about. Saturn brings some kind of levity into the point of what is essential here. In vibrational astrology, that's what Saturn does. It just says, I want to get down to the fundamental basics, thank you. And Jupiter's out there expanding and getting bigger and can get pretty airy-fairy in a sense that way, although it's in Cancer. So this is all emotional stuff. What I love too here is that Ceres is involved. Ceres is the mother, with, now granted, she's still in Aries, but it by degree is involved in this energy of the grand trine, and also with this mini grand trine, which Pluto is very much involved in. So there is so much transformation with as a cycle pump goes down into our core of self and emotion with the sun.
Yes. Yeah, and to bring it back to the story of Hades and Persephone, Ceres is sextiling Pluto in this chart as well. So, and sextiles give each planet the opportunity to work together and to come to terms to things or to overcome something. And with this new moon chart, well, you saw my face whenever I saw it, Sue. You were there. It's very heavy and it's very deep. And we also have Uranus is back at 29 degree Taurus. So that topic of just that, the basic needs and sense of comforts when it comes to nurturing and housing and clothes for everybody, those are going to be very alive within this new moon chart. But again, like to bring it back to the story, Ceres and Pluto, they're in a very nice relationship here. Pluto in Aquarius, which is, humanity and making sure that everybody has a sense of purpose and position while creating something. And Ceres is in, the pioneering spirit of Aries. So she wants to do something in a refreshing and renewed way. And with Mercury retrograde at this point.
That's the big point. That's really important. And it just because you're right. It is a whole chart. We've got things that we want to talk about, but I think just to ground this to bring up the fact that Mercury is conjunct. That's like a synodic conjunction, which is so important. But just before that, I was looking for my book, and I rearranged my bookshelf so I can't find it. But I think there was a Venus star point in Scorpio. So this is there. Mercury is retrograde. All like Pluto is the only outer planet that's not retrograde. This is an intense dive. I think but there's a flow happening and a connection. You're really
well. And speaking of Mercury being the only one who could go down into the underworld, and in this chart, the sun and moon are moving towards Mercury, so they're coming to terms with something. And I really think that this series sextile Pluto is an opportunity for us to come to terms with things of, really seeing things clearly. 28 degrees is the next to last sign in Scorpio. It doesn't get much deeper or darker than that.
Yes, indeed. That's right. 28 degrees often is the culmination, it's said, of everything before that anoretic, like, okay, I've done this now. Where am I going? Type attitude. Thank you. Thank you so much. We were a little off in my timing. Jen Sachs, you can find her at jensaxastrology.com. And you can email her at jen@jensachs. That's SACHS astrology.com. And myself, Talk Cosmos. And next week will be Planet Buzz only with Rob Bassetti. Laura is on a trip. And we'll be talking about this Jupiter trine Saturn. So check us out. It'll be great. Let's get to our questions. We have time. I'm so happy. Unless you want to go back to something, let me know, and we will. And through our chat, I tried to bring these questions up that we may go back and forth, because I have about 4 or 5 slides here, as you probably noticed. But Persephone in our times, I think it was, and the conversation brought up that it really redefines masculine and feminine, along with the idea that for men, it's been on news quite a bit. There's a certain amount of male loneliness, but we're changing identities. How do we integrate them? I'd love to hear. I know this is potent thought.
Yes, yeah, and Persephone, she overcomes. She reclaims her sovereignty, and she blossoms into a queen where people really take her and her authority very seriously. And this whole male loneliness epidemic, yes, the males. And also, we all have a Mars in our chart and a Saturn, and we all have these very masculine signs and energies that are activating through us every single day. And in terms of like Mars, it's in terms of this like male loneliness epidemic, just the Mars energy itself. Mars is kind of like he's that, what's he going to do next? Like Mars kind of needs something to do or something to focus on. Otherwise
action.
Yeah. He's just going to start doing stuff. So there needs to be some sort of sense of purpose, something to identify with, and something to work towards before, just goes off and starts wars and stuff. So I don't think it's just like masculine or male identifying humans, and gender's very fluid. So
yes, it is. And
incorrectly speaking things.
Bringing it up like that, I pondered, I kind of did quickly, because we don't think of it in black and white terms anymore. It's like yin yang, or it's assertive, receptive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah.
And in a lot of cultures,
it's always
been very fluid. It's like this concept of like a non-binary identity is new to in American culture, but there's other cultures, Native American cultures, Indian cultures. These are not new concepts. So, but kind of going back to that male loneliness and it being of Mars, it's, just with things changing so much and so rapidly at such broad and deep ways, it's what's happening with Mars in each of us. What is it that we're focused on? Where's our goal? Where's, because because Venus is fine. She's fine by herself. She wants to be at home with her crafts and her cats, and she can entertain herself. That's a loneliness and
desire. It's something you desire, you can fulfill.
Yes. So
however,
for all of us, if we can look at our own charts and our own life at these more masculine, energizing aspects and how that is being fulfilled, is going to really kind of help point us into ways about how it is that we are taking control of our life, our purpose, and how we align with the communities we are or are not in at the time as well.
Yeah, and let those roots regrow, because it is in the Aleutian mysteries, male, female, everybody was involved. It wasn't, and of course we're shifting into this unity of consciousness. It is really with redefining the polarities, because of the mixed blended, transformation is boundaries. The boundaries are changing and the roles change. And I find really it is a matter of getting involved in new communities, finding those new communities so that you can express a new role and identity to it. But I was just thinking yesterday, I listened to a great class that Gemini Brett gave with his Scorpio Anna, his wife Anna, and they have a school, Earthology. And I've always been an avid fan of Brett, and I've really stepped out. But they talked about Mars extensively. And as you were talking, I thought of things and then I lost it as I was listening. And I think a lot of it is this process of, like Anna brought up the idea of three wills, because it is purpose oriented, it's action. Mars is action, as you say, but there can be this introspection of action. And I think that's where, with all of this underground chart that we're with the retrogrades and the scorpionic of the why internally, it's that shadow. Because the external world reflects our interior. It's a mirror going back and forth. And it's what values are we really attached to? And Venus is in Scorpio right now. It's a deep subject there. She's not, values, and it could be a new Venus star point, as I say, which is one of the 5 of the Pentagon. So important. Meaning that what are you exchanging your purpose with? And allowing ourselves to be that nurturer. Oh boy. Jen, are you ready for the next one? So now, if Pluto is a call to power and Persephone is part of us, where are we collectively in that story? And where's our roots growing? And how do we change this victimhood to sovereignty?
Reclaiming our strengths. No matter how many times somebody knocks us down or pulls us into a situation that we did not think that we were ready for. Because ready or not, here I come. You can't hide. It's so where are we collectively in this story is we are seeing people react and or respond in a way that shows the connection, let me rephrase this. It seems as if humanity overall, there's this response to this new humanity that we're developing, that we're reacting and responding in a way that we identify with ourselves as. So yes, Pluto is boundaries, but Pluto is shared boundaries. So there needs to be the other in order for Pluto, Scorpio to exist. And a lot of things happen, Pluto also kind of like makes things scary, and really highlights that fear that Saturn can engage and
the ending of a cycle, death, as it's perceived. Will it be painful? What do I have to let go of? What control have I lost? These are they're substantial experiences or fears, maybe unfounded. Go ahead.
And because we have so much air and so much water, these things that is death and rebirth are things like how we identify these concepts around our communities and how we feel about these things. So again, reaction and response are two very different things. And right now, just the way everybody is behaving is a definite clue as to whether or not certain people and communities are allowing this transformation to happen, allowing the death, I should say, excuse me, the death of an identity or a concept they've always had throughout their life, that might be gone, you know. And gender, honestly, it's a big topic right now. And, you know, people who it doesn't even affect are having a certain type of response to other humans finding new ways to identify with themselves. Because it's like, you know, Persephone, that energy in the story, it's really, again, reclaiming one's self, one's sovereignty, and then coming into full bloom. You know, it's,
Oh, yes.
she always shines so bright, but she shined so much brighter in that underworld. And, you know, the thing with shining bright is you need sunglasses and you need to be protected if you're around something so bright. And there's a ton of strength it takes for somebody, you know, take like a malicious slander, for example. You know, like if there's a community who doesn't identify with something that this individual is, you know, it's calling out, then all this malicious slander happens. And it's like the individual who's receiving that energy, you know, in order for them to overcome, they need to like keep that self-reflection going and keep the self-identifying going and shine even brighter. And as that sun shines brighter and brighter and brighter from the individual, it's almost like kind of, you know, burning off people who were never part of their path to begin with.
Yes, well said, well said. And bringing up the idea of feeling reminds me that in Scorpio, it is emotion. It's frozen emotion. They say it's ice. It's a fixed sign, but everything melts and it also preserves. There's ice, as we know. We go to the North Pole and we find, or wherever, bodies from intact from the past that we learn a great deal from. But it is feeling. And I also reflect on the idea that I was reading with this about when the conjunction with Pluto and Uranus was back in 1965, because it was a period between 62 and 68. I almost put that in and then I took it out because no, it wasn't the focus. However, Dane Rudhart made an article, because it was May 18th. Anyway, it was at 18 degrees Virgo, the great conjunction, 65, 66. And it was during that span. And he was philosophizing in his sense. And he said exactly as you're saying, that there's going to be, Pluto is the collective mindset. And as we're, because this conjunction, it's, you know, it's what we're feeling. It is an orb. There will be a trine coming up. It has been square. It's not to confuse it with this other, I mean, some of the big cycles that are happening simultaneously are like huge currents that are just throbbing through, making new prisms of focus that are new for all of us. So what I'm getting at is that we've had the grand conjunction with Jupiter and Saturn, which is the push-pull of new social collective form. And then we have this larger cycle of Pluto with Uranus that are also going to be trining. But the point was that there would be a lot, it would be the old and the new. Again, he was saying, and so much rejection of it. There would be a lot of people, just like you were saying, not allowing. That was the key word that you said, that I thought, yes. So we're in a process. We're in a huge turmoil process, but this time right now is conducive. If we do the light, realize it going underneath with Persephone, having that nurturing of our what was memory, coming with our new terms to be that new identity, and find as we sprout what flower bed we're in. Maybe.
Yes, yeah. And and also not just like what flower bed or communities that we're in that suit us, but also going back to the shared boundaries, how can we make sure other communities and flower beds have the same opportunities to bloom and blossom just as much as we do?
Yeah. A part of this, we have one more, and we're big kind of towards the end of this wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Jen Sachs. Is trust with this new humanity. If we're reclaiming that is change in the unknown. And with that long-term mini grand trine, as they call it, where there's a trine with a sextile, which will be Neptune really holding the anchor between this great trine that's going on that I was talking about with Uranus and Pluto, that has morphed in their relationship from the conjunction in Virgo back in the 60s to the square that was happening at 2012 to 15 with so much identity with a lot of Aries happening. But now it's in this trine with Neptune. It is the unknown. Can we trust? Can we finally let that guard down to be vulnerable? And it is a matter of going internally without looking at, because the external is that reflection. And
Yes. And the trine is with Uranus. Pluto and Neptune have been sextile for like 80 years, I think, at least. But yeah, it's Pluto and Uranus there. That's a powerful combo, and Pluto wants control over things and wants to, just take everything to the depths of it and to discover all the joys and all the shame and all, all the just everything that goes into knowing somebody else fully, in that fullness of knowing another being and them knowing you. That gives the opportunity to know what's best for these shared boundaries or laws, in terms of like government. But with Uranus, Uranus is very neutral. Uranus just wants to shake things up and for us to take advantage of when everything is on a more neutral playing field, to not only reclaim what we have going on but also to learn new skills. Uranus is an extremely ingenious planet.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Yes, and
the fact that we're teeter-tottering between, well, like now retrograde 29 degrees, we're going to go back over that 0 degrees. That's also transforming and the boundaries, as you were mentioning, and the shared and gathering maybe something from the old to bring into the new again as seeds. So really this collective mind of humanity, we're remodeling our identities and forming new groups. And I think really important to remember the sense of Earth as our mother, and our own sense of nurturing whoever that is, and our friends, our family, our mothers.
Yeah.
Dads too, dads.
Yeah. We all have all of these different aspects within our chart. No matter if we identify with a masculine or we identify as a feminine, we all have Mars, we all have Venus, Ceres, Pluto. We all have moments of being kind and moments of being mean. I always have gratitude whenever I have a moment with you, though, Sue. So thank you so much.
Well, it is really a joy. And this entire idea of feeling is the connection that leads us to our manifestations. That's such an awareness for me, because I can be quite airy, a thrill to be bouncing around up there in the waves of just currents. But when you ground and you sense, is this really responding? And then trusting. I think that's part of it, trusting your feelings. And perhaps too, as it said, if we say something, following through with our words, because then we can trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Trust yourself, trust your experience, and trust your ability to reflect and allow yourself to be guided by your inner self.
Yes, and awaken that new sense of experience.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
Gotta be curious. Yeah, that's some inner child work right there.
Yeah. I know Wayne Dyer says with intention, I want to feel good, because good is what source is, and that's what made us. And it's like, okay, fine. Let's do it. Thank you, everybody. Pluto Mythos. May your journey be great. And thank you for joining.
Thank you for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.